Welcome to the Great Basin Smoke Dispersion Briefing for Friday, October 4th. Over the last 2 weeks, we've seen cooler temperatures across most of the Great Basin, especially across northern Utah, northern Nevada, and up into Idaho, along with above normal precipitation over the northern half of the region. We've continued with warmer and drier conditions over southern areas of the Great Basin over the last 2 weeks, with the warmest conditions over southeast and eastern Utah. Over the last 72 hours, we've only seen some light snowfall up into the higher elevations of Idaho, back into southeastern Wyoming, and far northwest Nevada. The snow depth, we are seeing a good snowpack over parts of Idaho into western Wyoming. At least for the time of year, we're seeing several inches up in the higher elevations. Looking at our satellite image from earlier this morning, you can see a trough of low pressure along the west coast, which will continue moving eastward across the Great Basin, keeping breezy winds out ahead of this feature, along with cooling temperatures and some precipitation to northern areas. As we move through the day today, that trough of low pressure will swing eastward fairly quickly into the eastern side of the Great Basin by later this afternoon and this evening. We will see a few showers, mainly over Idaho into Wyoming, along with stronger, breezier winds over the eastern half of the Great Basin. Therefore, we will have good dispersion in all areas today. We will see dispersion slightly start to decrease over the higher terrain of the Sierra as high pressure starts to build in. The strongest winds today will be located over, again, the eastern and northern half of the Great Basin, where wind gusts will exceed 35 or 40 miles per hour. We will see winds decreasing today over western areas of Nevada. Mixing heights will remain relatively high in all areas and only a little bit lower up into the central Idaho mountains, eastern Idaho, and Wyoming. As we move into Saturday, a secondary cold front will drop south, bringing cooler temperatures once again to Idaho and Wyoming and keeping breezy winds. So we will have better dispersion up across northern areas on Saturday, but fairly poor dispersion over the rest of the Great Basin, which will see lighter winds and still under the influence of the ridge of high pressure building off the west coast. We will see winds lighter region-wide on Saturday. We will still see some breezy winds over Idaho and Wyoming with gusts around 30 miles per hour, so lighter than what we will see today. Mixing heights will remain relatively high or moderate in most areas. As we move into Sunday, the ridge of high pressure starts to build off the west coast, bringing some warming conditions, with still some cooler weather up across Idaho and Wyoming from the influence of that secondary cold front. We will see winds decrease in most areas, so we will see generally poor dispersion. We will see some breezy winds over southern areas, keeping dispersion a little bit higher over southern Nevada, the Arizona Strip, and far southern Utah. And again, on Sunday, you can see where those gusty winds will be located over southern areas of the Great Basin, with most wind gusts between about 20 and 25 miles per hour. Elsewhere, generally light to moderate winds. Mixing heights will remain moderate region-wide on Sunday. Looking at the forecast clearing index for Utah for the next few days, with those stronger winds today, we will see very high clearing indices across all of Utah. As we move into Saturday, we will only see those gusty winds generally in the higher terrain along the central mountains, so the clearing index will remain much higher in the higher terrain and much lower over eastern and western areas of Utah and the lower elevations. On Sunday, we will see a decrease in the clearing index across the state. The forecast amounts of precipitation over the next few days, as those cold fronts move by over northern areas, we will see the heaviest precipitation in the central Idaho mountains, eastern Idaho, and the higher terrain of western Wyoming, with lighter showers over southern Idaho into far northern Nevada and northern Utah. Otherwise, dry conditions will persist across the rest of the Great Basin. As we move into early next week, we will see temperatures gradually warm as high pressure builds over the southern areas, and still some breezy westerly flow, keeping temperatures cooler further north up into Idaho. Therefore, we will see generally poor dispersion in the lighter winds further south. On Tuesday, another cold front, which will be stronger than the ones we will see this week, will start dropping south into the Pacific Northwest. This will bring some cloud cover and maybe some light showers over Idaho on Tuesday, along with stronger winds across the Great Basin, and this will keep dispersion fairly high. We will start to see some of those cooling temperatures in the north on Tuesday. Otherwise, warmer conditions will continue for the early part of next week across the southern areas of the Great Basin. That trough of low pressure will swing eastward by Wednesday, dropping a cold front into the northern half of the Great Basin. So we will see cooling temperatures, but most of this cold front will be on the dry side, so we likely won't see very much precipitation, just the cooling temperatures and increase in relative humidity. We will still keep those breezy southwest to northwest winds over southern and western areas on Wednesday. Therefore, again, good dispersion region-wide. As we move into Thursday, that trough of low pressure and cold front swings to the east, so we will see some Decreasing winds under that ridge of high pressure later in the week over western areas, so we will see dispersion decrease. Otherwise, gusty north winds behind the cold front will keep the ventilation index very high over the eastern two-thirds of the region. Looking at the forecast amount of precipitation from Monday through Wednesday, again, most of that cold front will remain on the dry side. Any precipitation will be confined to the far northern areas of the Great Basin. Looking at the 8 to 14-day outlook, taking us from October 11th through the 17th, showing warmer conditions over the southern two-thirds of the Great Basin along with drier conditions. Any precipitation will remain mainly confined to far northern and western areas associated with cold fronts moving into the Pacific Northwest. That concludes our webcast for today. Check back on Monday for the latest updates.